push it to the limit. Walk along the razor's edge. Don't look down, just keep your head and you'll be better. And that is the best rendition of that song you're going to hear today, anyways. Welcome to Stoner's Point of View, show where we provide high-level analysis of music and movies and our influences of such under legal Canadian cannabis. I'm here with my co-hosts, Terrell and Phil. Gentlemen, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Hello, everyone.
There's a nice wave from T-Boss. Philly.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I was not feeling so hot yesterday. I'm feeling a lot better now. And then right before I came down to record this episode, my wife looked at me and said, "You look cool." And I was like, "Okay, I got a good thing going here. Let's do this."
When you get that wife vote of approval as a domesticated 30-something, let me tell you,
yeah,
that is.
I felt cool. I still feel cool.
Before I get too far, I just want to say, if you're not following us on social media, please do so. Twitter and Instagram at The Stoners POV. We have a YouTube channel where all of our episodes go on to our YouTube channel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so follow them, check them out, get at us, contact us, talk to us, please. For the love of God, talk to us.
Touch us.
Well,
smell us.
No, you can just talk to us. Don't listen to Phil.
Well, and one thing I want to say is, like, I bet, because I bet this happens all the time, but I bet there's some, like, closet listeners out there that are like, it wouldn't be very cool if I, like, talk to them. I'd out myself as a mark, and I don't want to do that. And no, guys, talk to us. Seriously.
Yeah,
like,
it's time to come out of the closet, guys.
Yeah. You can just listen. It wasn't cool 10 years ago when we were in bands and people, would say great set, but then actually didn't watch or care and would just talk smack about you behind your back. It wasn't cool then. It's not cool now. Just talk to us. Be cool. We're cool. You can be cool.
So I got a question to start the show. I wanted to ask you and Phil and anyone listening. Do you agree? You disagree? Let us know. So who's a better actor, Pacino or De Niro?
Ooh.
So our main character is Pacino in Scarface, but he's been known to act with his near and dear friend De Niro.
Robert De Niro,
yeah,
definitely an outstanding actor as well. I'll pick Al. I'll stick with Al.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Al. He shows. I feel like I could just think of a lot more versatile roles he's played than Pacino, than De Niro.
De Niro, yeah.
You know what though, De Niro. The one movie that I really like about him that we should do on the show, and if any of our viewers have seen this movie, you may have, you may not have, it's Deer Hunter. Deer Hunter, amazing war flick, quite the psychological thriller. If you haven't seen it, Brett, have you seen it? Have you seen the Deer Hunter?
No, that's why it'd be outstanding for the pod.
Or De Niro, sorry, De Niro's in it, sorry. And Phil's seen it, obviously he's nodding here like, yes, excellent choice, Terrell. And that's the best De Niro other than like Taxi Driver.
Yeah. Raging Bull or like some of the
Pacino
early
is the
gangster
best.
stuff.
And the reason why is Scarface.
Yeah. Pacino's pretty good, yeah. So yeah, as you guys may have surmised, that's our movie for the day is Scarface. And one of the scenes, which we'll no doubt talk about, features a song, which is our song for the day. And it's Push It to the Limit.
Yeah.
And the problem with Push It to the Limit, right from the outset, is it's not built to be listener friendly because you can't find a consistent version anywhere. Mm-hmm. And the version that's actually in the movie isn't the version that's on Spotify. It's not the one that was released on the Scarface soundtrack even. That one doesn't have the cool little whistle, like the that part.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that on the soundtrack version. It doesn't have the guitar solo in the soundtrack version. Like, it's just a stripped down, and unfortunately, guess which one I listened to? The shitty pared down version on Spotify.
You know what? You know what? This just reminds me, like, this show is called The Stoner's Point of View. Maybe these stoners, we should actually pick a version to talk about, because we do this like all the time with like movies and
the
songs.
thing is I like being the stoners we are, we didn't put any research into this beforehand, and so like, because I ran into the same issue too, and I was like, you know what, I should warn the guys about this. Then I'm like, nah, fuck those guys. It'll be hilarious if they didn't even listen to the right version.
Well, the worst thing is I listen to many versions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the versions, in fact, the one that, as you can see behind me here, the one that was in the Simpsons couch gag, that one was the one that I first remember. Like, I didn't even remember this being in the montage song of Scarface. Like, when I hear this song, I think of this Simpsons vignette. And
Fucking hat. Sorry.
it's a way more rockin' version. It's like, I don't know, it just feels better. But even so, you can put a pile of sprinkles on a piece of shit, and it's still going to be a piece of shit. So,
What,
let's
Brett?
get
You're
it.
saying you don't love Push It to the Limit? Is that what you're saying, Brett?
I don't love Push It to the Limit, but I'm going to try to give it a fair shake. Try to be unbiased as possible till the end when we get to our rankings, and let's go. So, the main synth line that everybody knows, the do 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 do, it comes in, and okay,
Best part of the song. It all goes
admittedly
downhill
catchy.
from there.
Yeah, it's admittedly catchy. And then the singer comes in with some very 80s style singing, and it's just about, like, one of his lyrics is "open up the limit." Like,
Yeah.
what are you even talking about, man?
You know, I realized actually just before we recorded this, Brett, this song, it is literally, it is about pushing it to the limit.
Yeah.
Like, and that's as
That's
deep
about
as
it.
it gets. Like, we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
know what we're pushing for. You're just fucking giving her, as we say in Canada, bud.
Yeah.
You know, like you're doing about 140 clicks, you know, an hour down the
around
401,
the
and you're
Kimmies
fucking,
and scooching in for a double, bud.
bro,
must
I
be
got
having-
the Sunfire GT, bud. But yeah, there's just no depth to this song. It's just, it is
No, and-
100% surface level.
And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this is like the redeeming quality is at least like the catchy, you know, hooky part. And then it goes into this pre-chorus, and like, the vocals are fine in the pre-chorus, you know, but the chords, did you guys listen to the chords in that? They're like sour and weird and like not audibly pleasing at all. Like,
No.
I felt my ears getting offended listening to those stupid chords.
And that's the
it
thing
was-
with this
sorry,
kind
that
of
just-
song. That's the thing with this kind of song, Brett, is that so like the 80s have a lot of like really cool examples of people using synths and writing like cool 80s like electronic type like songs, right? You guys know the point I'm gonna make. But then there's songs like this is what people actually remember about the 80s and like the kind of music that existed then, and they associate with like Miami Vice and Scarface and all that stuff. And it turns out that this is not very good, and it's really like a bad example of that kind of like synthy 80s music. And what I hate about the song the most is that it's like one note on the bass line for most
Yeah.
of the song. It just pumping,
Yeah.
bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
And I'm just like it
Well-
just drives it crazy.
Terrell, I think I was actually the one that suggested this song. And yeah, like upon listening to this song without any accompanying media, like, you know, I remember it from like Grand Theft Auto and from Scarface, obviously. And then like listening to it on its own, I'm just like, wow, this song, like I associate it with better things than this song, because like
Yeah.
this song, it kind of sucks, you know. And you know, we haven't even gotten into who wrote this song. Paul Engemann. Now actually I just discovered before the podcast, works, he's like a main guy at like some MLM company. It's like Xiao Chai or something. It's like a chocolate subscription service.
Okay.
It's pretty great.
Well,
looking up some
imagine
Paul
you're
Engemann.
like running this chocolate subscription service, and then you just like part of your pitch is, yeah, I wrote Push It to the Limit. It's like,
Yeah, well, and that's
what is Push It to the Limit? It's like, oh yeah, Scarface. Oh, Scarface. Yeah. No, I didn't have anything to do with the movie. They just kind of bought my song, and
I discovered this like about 45 minutes before we started recording today.
nice.
Otherwise I would have figured out a way to get like the video, like these videos on screen. It's like, oh, how to recruit like prospects or whatever.
Oh,
There's
my
like one
word.
where he's like, here's how the compensation structure works. Like, here's a diagram, and it's just a straight up pyramid. Like,
Is that type of guy-
so-
my.
He's the type of guy that adds you on Facebook from high school and you just like delete.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like every one of his videos though starts with like, oh hi, I'm Paul Engemann. Yeah, you know, I started out in the entertainment industry. I sang the title track for the movie Scarface.
Hi, my name is Paul Engemann, and I'm a presidential double diamond with Josiah the Healthy Chocolate, and I'd like to welcome you to the team. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My previous life, I was a rock singer. Back in the 80s, I was the lead singer of a rock group called Animotion, and we had some top 10 records, and I sang the main title song in the movie Scarface, and that was my life for many years.
I guess he also did like the song for like the Los Angeles Olympics, I think, and I don't know what year that was, but
Must have been the 80s.
Yeah. He's just gone straight douche now with the multi-level marketing shit. It's just it really bummed me out watching that right before we started the episode.
Well,
I gotta get it out, boys.
Hey, Paul, if you're listening, don't come for us. Just come for Phil. Send us on Twitter. I honestly I'm not jiving on this song. I think the thing I hate about it the most is that it's just like it doesn't represent the 80s to me. No. And on its own,
well, it does, just poorly.
Yeah, on its own it doesn't. And then when you watch it for the movie, it's really like a well-placed song. It fits in good. But
they only use the best part of the song. Like the parts of this song that are popular are the best parts, which is probably why they're the most popular, because logic, right? But yeah, like it taking snips from this song and using it in cool things like this Simpsons couch gag and Scarface and stuff, man, like that was cool. But yeah,
but that is the one thing that this song does have, like its legacy. It is the montage song now, and it's like a recurring joke in a lot of different, like I believe it's actually used in Team America World Police. They use it, and like, or some version of this, so it did become like a meme on its own.
It's ubiquitous. You see it everywhere now. I think what's interesting about it though the most is that it does have this enduring legacy, much like the movie Scarface itself does in pop culture. I think the song just used so and the story, and it was such like a big like pop culture thing that whether it's the song or the idea of the movie, it just gets referenced over and over and over again. And before we do get into the movie, I just want to just say this. Let's try to limit how many Pacino or like mostly Pacino impressions we do. Let's try to limit it to like one or two, especially for you, Phil. We heard you're Australian. Let's try to keep it chill.
Oh, you know what I learned today? Connor, check this out. I learned that Australians actually say tuna and Tuesday.
Like
I'm
with
getting
the
better.
With the CH.
Yeah,
sound.
they chew on it. They chew on it.
Okay. All right.
I was listening to Jason Ellis earlier.
So this song didn't have a lot of substance to it. And we tried our best to give it whatever props we could, but invariably we ended up crapping on it like Castro crapped on the US in the 80s. And so I got nothing left to say about this song.
What do you give it out of 10, Bretsky?
That's a middle finger out of 10 for me.
That's a new ranking. Yeah, I don't know if I could give it anything lower than like I'm gonna give it a 2.1. I just made that number up only because I don't think it's a 2 just because of the pop culture influence. Sure. But everything else about the song I just dislike, other than it being in Scarface and in pop culture a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'll give it a 2 because like everything except the song itself is good here. Like the way it's used is good. Like it kicks in with a pretty gnarly riff, and like the production's good, but it's just like it's polishing a turd. Like it just doesn't work. So everything, the actual bones of the song and Paul Engemann's performance. By the way, I love the "ooh yeah" that he does in the song. But everything else is crap. So 2 out of 10 for me.
2 out of 10. All right, so with that, that about does it for the song portion. That might be the fastest song portion we've ever done on this show.
It might have been the song the most lacking in substance song. I don't know how to finish that sentence, but there's just nothing there. It's an empty vessel of a song.
Right. It's like Two Princes in that way.
No.
But
nice. So hold on. Before we go on, I think we should say that "Push It to the Limit," the song is the jerk of the week. No,
I was going to give it to Paul Engemann.
Yeah, I was gonna actually give it to Paul Engemann. I had someone completely different in mind until when I just stumbled across these MLM videos that he's putting.
That's what I
out
was gonna
now.
say. That's what really pushed it.
Yeah, like that pushed it to the limit for me. Paul, you fucking jerk.
Phil Froze,
Yeah.
jerk of the week.
I don't want your freaking chocolates, all right? And who wants to subscribe to a chocolate service?
Chocolate addicts.
I mean, but chocolate is everywhere. Like you're in a grocery store, you're in a convenience store, you're in any store, even stores that have nothing to do with chocolate somehow have little weird chocolate things.
Sometimes you'll like go like in someone's office and they'll be selling chocolates for like their nephew or something.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah.
There's chocolate everywhere.
Listeners, if you are ever in a job interview situation and the person holding the interview first starts by saying that you can have his job pretty quickly if you work hard enough, don't take that job. And also, especially if you have to pay an entry fee to get the job, if you have to buy a kit, like don't do this.
No.
And listen to me, Paul Engemann. I know what you're doing. And it's not rocking, just like this fucking song.
Don't like it, Paul. We don't like it. That felt therapeutic. I'm not gonna lie. I was feeling a little bit, I don't know, under the weather. Just not myself. Not feeling really up and ready to rock for this episode. I came on. I didn't come out of the gate strong. I think I crushed that version of the song better than Paul Engemann did. But you know, I wasn't really feeling it. And then as we progressed, and I started to let the poison out a little bit. You know, I'm feeling good now.
I like when we like find songs that we all collectively dislike, and instead of us gushing and being all like, "Oh, I love that song. It's a sweet production," or whatever crap we say. I actually want to do more like songs like this that are just awful, like really not really like well wrote, like from a musician's point of view.
We've been kind of following that trend a little bit lately. That, like, with the exception of last week, the song was pretty good, but most of our songs have not been great the last little bit. But it is what it is, folks. You're here now. You've been with us this long, and we thank you for that.
What episode is this? Is this like 24?
23.
23.
Okay. Wow.
The Michael Jordan number.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Michael Jordan episode.
Mm-hmm. We could have done that movie, The Number 23, with Ashton Kutcher.
Jim Carrey, actually.
Oh yeah, that's
You're
right.
thinking Butterfly.
I was thinking Butterfly.
They just had the same haircuts. It's fine. It's fine. They had the same, you know, that kind of haircut, like the little.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, no, for sure, bud.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, bud.
So yeah, I do want to get into the movie, and we should probably get to it soon because it was a 3-hour movie. So I can't imagine our breakdown is going to be short and sweet like the song was. So. Unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about, we have an open floor now if you want to talk, or we can move into the movie.
Oh, I do actually have one thing to say, but I also have to pee, so I'll make it brief.
Okay.
So I get migraines every once in a while, and sometimes they get really bad. And yesterday was a really bad one, and I've been having these for most of my life, and one of the only things that could actually help with that and ease the absolute agony of it is marijuana. And just yesterday, you know, my wife's like, well, why don't you just smoke a bowl? And I'm just like, oh, you know what, like, yeah, like I was a little hesitant about it, you know, because you know, I had fatherly duties and whatnot, but you know, my wife was looking after the kid and stuff. But the point of the matter is that I remember a few years ago having to get my wife to like meet a guy I knew who sold pot, and it was all very shady and under the table and inconvenient. And like, just because like I'm like laying in a bed, like just hating my life in so much pain. Right. And just the thought that now it's just like, you know, if I didn't have some readily available from growing,
right.
I could just send my wife down the road to the store to go get some, you know,
right.
which is, it was just really awesome. It was just like a, hey, weed's legal moment for me. That just happened.
And we definitely love to extol the virtues of legal weed on this podcast, but I think it is warranted because, yeah, the convenience and a situation like that is a perfect example, Phil. And like, I can vouch for the migraine cure.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Second.
get a lot of migraines, but one time I had one really savagely bad in my younger years, and it was actually when Phil and I were friends way back in the day, and it was his suggestion. He's like, smoke a big cacker, and we did, and it went away to my absolute like stunned. Like it blew me away. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I know that it deadens pain and stuff, but you still feel that, right? For the most part. But with that, it was gone, man. Like I couldn't believe it. Blew my mind.
I get migraines as well, and I don't get them too often, but yeah, you know, I have to say that marijuana is really powerful. And it's funny, I was just talking to a family member. She's a bit older and she uses like marijuana products. Obviously she doesn't like vape or smoke or like THC. She does it for the CBD,
edibles and stuff.
Edibles and things like that. And I think there's a lot of applications that aren't like openly talked about in society of marijuana, especially for things like migraines or headaches, or just like needing to relax at the end of the night, or muscle pain with CBD. And I definitely think it's something people should talk about more often. I don't think there's anything wrong with smoking. If you're okay with people drinking alcohol at bars or having a glass of wine with dinner to relax, there's literally no difference to smoking a little bit of pot, other than you might eat like too much food and like go to bed real early.
Yep, I totally agree. So get out there, Canadians, and get yourself some of that sweet, sweet legal weed. And for those of you who aren't Canadians, push your local political affiliates to make it legal, damn it, because it should be legal everywhere. And I firmly believe that. And yeah, shout it from the rooftops. So I think that's going to about do it for the first portion of this podcast. And we are going to kick back in with Scarface in 1 second. Welcome back to the second half, Stoner's Point of View. We're about to kick into an iconic 80s movie, Scarface. One of our
Scarface!
One of our collective favorites. One of our collective favorites here. And I don't think much prefacing needs to be done. I'm sure majority of people who watch this have already seen that.
Who hasn't seen this?
Exactly. So we're just gonna get right to it. So we get right off the hop, great music. The soundtrack for the 80s movie is pretty good. Minus that "Push It to the Limit" song.
Well, you know what? Even that song propped up against the backdrop that is this movie is awesome. Like it just fits so well.
So we get this nice little scrolling info dump with some backstory. Basically, what it boils down to is Fidel Castro, under the guise of letting citizens join their relatives in the U.S., decide to send a bunch of boats full of convicts and criminals. Which to me, that's a crazy concept, man. Like you're just like polluting another country by just like sending them all your riffraff. And yeah, it's like the officer said when he's questioning Tony, which we'll get to in a minute, they're crapping all over us. You know, it's such an apropos line. But yeah, we get all these shots of these boats and shit. And I want to bring up the director here for a minute, Brian De Palma, and just like the filmmaking work. Because what I notice about this is like I like to pay attention to filmmaking aspect. And for me, De Palma is such a great chameleon director. And what I mean by that is his work is crisp and tight. And most high profile directors have like their signature things that stand out. Like we had Guy Ritchie the other like couple podcasts ago, and like he's got a very defined style. Like he's got shaky cams and like all these crazy shots, right? It's kind of like a signature for him. But in this movie, I feel like the cinematography and everything was just like so perfect for the film and so well done that none of it like stood out in a way that was like bad.
Yeah,
I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in a good way. It was like so polished that I couldn't really.
You don't even notice it, you know? Like that's,
Well, the thing is, awesome. De Palma is like cited as like a leading member of the new Hollywood generation of filmmakers. So like movies like Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, Night of the Living Dead, which we just watched, you know, Romero's Day of the Dead. So you can see this is kind of like a new form of filmmaking. I find that De Palma was, you can tell he's influenced by Alfred Hitchcock, especially like the bathroom scene where the buddy gets murdered with the chainsaw. Later on in the film, really iconic scene. But I think De Palma is an amazing director, and I think he's one of the reason why he's so special is that movies used to be made by producers, and De Palma is one of the first people that like was a director that really controlled the movie and like was the author of the movie and really made everything happen. And that's a big change in Hollywood. And that's actually one of the big influences of Scarface that people don't talk about because they're too worried about like saying Al Pacino lines shittily and talking about cocaine. But the movie itself is actually, like you said, like De Palma is
we are not worried about that.
De Palma is an amazing filmmaker, and this movie's a great example of that because, like, how often can you watch a movie for 3 hours and be totally like into it? The pacing's so good,
for sure,
and it feels like 15 minutes later, you know, Tony's dead and the movie's over. Like,
well, and that was something I actually wanted to bring up is, you know, like I always bitch about movies being too long, but when they're like this movie is like I could deal with like going more in depth, like, you know, like there's so many more potential stories within this universe. Like I almost want them to go Star Wars with it and just
like
beat it
1980s Miami.
But
like it's just, I don't know, it's just like it left me wanting more
for sure
after 3 hours, which is a feat for a movie.
They were supposed to make sequels. If you go on like line and stuff, you can see that it's been talk about it. But I personally feel what makes Scarface so great is that it is like a start to finish kind of like whole arc of Tony Montana. And I feel like it would be really, really hard to somehow Terminator 2 Scarface. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So speaking of Tony, we get introduced to him here. And what I have here is that like Pacino, he just makes this role so unique as well. Like we all have seen him over the years, and he's got this classic Al Pacino style. And when he does it in the context of this movie and this character, like it's just great. It creates this like very unique version of the Cuban accent. Like it's not a crisp, like authentic, like super authentic sounding Cuban accent, but that's what makes it great.
He gets criticized a lot for his accent in this from Cubans and everyone.
Yeah.
Although I will tell you, when I was in Cuba, the first time somebody called me Mang, I was so full of glee. I was the belle of the ball.
You're just like waiting. You're waiting to say your.
I was like, do they actually say this? And the guy's like, yeah, no problem, Mang. And I'm just like, oh my goodness.
I can totally see, and like I thought this when you were in Cuba, that like I could just picture you sitting there with a whiskey and a cigar.
Yep.
In like one of your lounge chairs and just thinking in your fucking Scarface.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Anyways, so Tony, like he's getting questioned at the border and he stutters over cocaine. So that's kind of like the foreshadowing early on when he's asked if he ever did it. But then he explains away his scar and his tattoo. Turns out the tattoo is actually like an assassin's tattoo or something like that. But he passes it off, he gets through, and we get a note here where there was some good dialogue in this movie because this is where we get introduced to Manny, and it's Tony and Manny on the bus kind of talking.
Well, before we go to that though, we got to talk about this scene. I gotta say,
sure.
When Tony does his like, you own nothing, you got nothing, there's nothing you can do to me that Castro hasn't already done.
Right,
I gotta say, Pacino is a really good. I watched this and I was like,
intense, right?
He is a good actor, and I was all high, and I had like my arms on my hips, being like, well, this is a quality flick because he can really act. Like,
Well, and like let's be real. Like if you're watching or listening to this podcast, it's probably not the first time you've seen Scarface, you always remember it for Tony Montana being this super bombastic character, and I always kind of forget about that part where it shows the human element of his character and of that deeper desperation, like where that drive to get more now that you're in this easier place to do it,
Yeah, and I like the earlier version of Tony in this movie, like just in storytelling there's a plot device called saving the cat, and this is kind of like Tony's saving the cat moment because he doesn't really do anything redeeming like in the movie, so they had to find something else to kind of give us the sympathy moment or the empathy moment with Tony. And I feel like that authenticity right there where he was just like speaking from the heart, that was a good instance of that. But then him and Manny on the bus, we get some good dialogue with the sanitation and the sanitarium stuff.
Joe said sanitation, or no, Joe said a sanitarium.
That's one, Phil. That's one.
So Manny explains the premise of the initial job to take out Emilio Rebenga, and apparently they get a green card for killing this political guy. So of course Tony's nuts about it. Like right away, he goes from that like authentic, heartfelt thing to nuts, and he's like, "I kill a communist for free. For a green card, I'm gonna carve him up real good."
Oh yeah,
that's yours, Brett. That's yours. That's your one.
Yeah. I figure we'll get him out. We'll get him out early and often. That way, we're done with it.
That is a good one, though. I do love that line. Like, it just makes you realize, like, you go from this impassioned speech about like politics and growing up under an authoritarian like regime, and then it goes into him being like, "Yeah, I'll kill him for fun."
Yeah, well, and it didn't hit me till way later in the movie, and I'll just kind of touch on it when we get to that scene. But what I started to realize as the movie unraveled is his opposition and his hatred for communism was so strong that it drove him so far over the capitalist bridge that like that's what led to ultimately his inevitable undoing. And it was just rooted in this like, you know, just fervor that he wasn't going to, you know, do anything that could be remotely considered communist, and that includes being a decent human being.
Well, but to be fair, he was already a piece of shit back in old Cuba.
Right.
True, yeah.
So then we get the actual kill scene, and it's just this riot, and they're all chanting "Libertad, Libertad," and they actually make the death super easy. They basically just like scare chase this guy through a crowd. And like through a building, and then he comes out the back door, and Tony just puts him down. And once again, the intense acting, like he's just a savage. Like it's just such a quick, callous kill.
What I like about it though is the direction of this scene. It really builds it up. It gives you a lot of suspense about you know, this Rebenga's guy's death, and that's what I really like about this part. I remember watching it all stoned, being like, "Oh, I remember."
Oh yeah, it was one of those stoned
so
like like walls are encroaching on you moments, and I was like, "Oh, this is sweet." Yeah, for sure.
There was actually something interesting I noticed, or something weird I noticed during that scene, because you know I had this movie on DVD. Well, I still have it, but I watched I watched it on a streaming service because it was in like 1080p or whatever. It just looks better than DVD, and then I also don't have to hunt through my boxes of stuff I haven't unpacked. But during that scene when they're doing the Libertad, when they're doing that chant, there's this one guy and he like pops out from behind the bed and he's like, Libertad, Libertad. Like he has like no sense of rhythm. Like, and he's just completely out of time with the rest of them. Or at least that was the case on the versions that have seen up till this point. And then it seemed like they edited it and made it so there's not like one guy who can't keep up with a simple chant like that, because that used to drive me crazy.
So
and
that was,
like, it was like once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it.
That was a memory of something happening that didn't happen in the version you watched this time.
Yeah, and like I own
like
on.
the
I've seen
Mandela
this
effect
movie,
shit, bro.
I've seen it so many times, and so I swear when they did like the re-release of it on Blu-ray,
right,
and like the modern like the upscaled versions of it, I think they actually corrected that little issue there, because
a nice little nifty factoid there.
Yeah. Like I'm gonna have to go and dig out that DVD to confirm that. Maybe I should have done that in preparation for this podcast, but hey, whatever.
If you can't confirm that, then you need to contact the whole like Mandela effect cult and be like, yo, anyone else remember this shit?
So yeah, history has to be the way that I remember it.
Also,
my memory couldn't possibly be wrong.
This goes back to us having to. We should probably find the same version to watch all together. we always do this where we're like, did we like see something that I didn't think was in the movie? It just sounds like we're high.
Well, this is about getting high and watching movies and making notes, so it's no surprise to me that happens. So the boys, Manny and Tony, they got their green cards, which means they can go get some lucrative work as dishwashers at a restaurant. So some good, honest work, and we know that's gonna last. Which it doesn't, because right away they meet Omar and Waldo, who are Lopez's guys. Manny has
before, like just how angrily Tony Montana's doing dishes. Like he's just like touches a plate. He's like, fuck. Like, it's so good.
Well, and that ties in after they meet Omar and Waldo, who are Lopez's guys. These guys originally try to lowball them on this weed deal, and Tony just shuts it down. He's like, nah. And
what do you think we are, baggage handlers?
Yeah, and what
It's
I
like,
have,
no, I think you're a dishwasher, bro.
yeah, exactly. And so, like, what I have here written down is the balls on this guy.
Oh yeah.
But then, yeah, instead, because of his big humongous dinosaur balls, he ends up setting up this big coke deal. So the guys quit their dishwashing. They quit their dishwashing jobs on the spot. Well, sorry, Tony retires.
Yeah,
as he says. And then, then I don't know if there was anything else that stood out to you guys there, but
what stood out to me is how much Tony hates Colombians. I didn't know Cubans hated Colombians so much, but that's a big part of like why I feel this deal doesn't go down so well. Because it seems like it's foreshadowing him being like, I don't like fucking Colombians.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like, well, you better like them because they're going to do it.
Or at least pretend to like them. But Tony doesn't pretend to like anybody. Like he's Tony Montana. So obviously we're at the coke deal. Tony and Angel get double crossed by Hector the Toad. Angel ends up getting cut up with a chainsaw in an attempt to get the money from Tony. But what I want to say before we continue on with this scene is like just the way that Tony stands his ground while Buddy is just like making excuses, say, no, I don't have the drugs here. And then he just like waits. He's thinking that Tony's just going to be bullied into, and he's like, well, I don't have the money either. Like, it's just like, okay, all right. But yeah, then Manny and Chi-Chi eventually come in and have to bust in and save the day. They end up doing that. Hector takes off. And then I love the line here where he's like, Chi-Chi, get the Yale. Just like,
yeah,
okay,
classic.
cool.
Well, that scene, it's such an iconic scene, you know, like even like in Grand Theft Auto Vice City, there's like an apartment you can walk into and it's got like, it's the chainsaw room from this movie. That whole game is an ode to Scarface, but I guess because they had a very hard time getting this because the MPAA wanted to give this an X rating. And they had to send in and one of their big issues was this scene, and they're like, oh, it's so gory, and they're like, no, like if you look, we don't actually show anything. You just hear the chainsaw and you see the blood. You're right. Very, very, that is very much like Hitchcock. But so this was actually a part of that huge battle with the MPAA to get this an R rating as opposed to an X rating, because if it was X rated, they couldn't even market it, right? So,
well, you got to think about it, man. Like my thought of this when I saw this scene just recently, I have it in my notes, is this came out in 1983. Imagine we just took this drug deal scene as basically what it is, drug deal gone bad, and just went around and showing it some grandmas and babushkas all around North America. Just show them this around 1983, 1984. Those people would be freaked out. He murders the dude in cold blood on the street of Miami to end the scene where they just like
right.
And it's done with that like that muffled realism. Like, you know, like they just like they leave the guy dead in the street, and it's not like, hey, get over here. It's just like they just like get in the car and fucking leave and get out of there as fast as possible. There's no ceremony about it. It's just so gritty and just really sets the tone for the film.
And that's what's so great about it, because you think about it, how many movies are like that within like this is like the first like 15, 20 minutes? Yeah. Like maybe Tarantino does stuff like this to like get you in the mood for a movie. But like this film is one of those very few films, and I think it's one of the ones that I can think of that are that old from 83 that is just like, this scene is quite like, whoa, what did I just watch?
Well, like the first time I saw the movie, to you know, paraphrase my thoughts at the time, was like, whoa, like this movie is not fucking around. Like they established that pretty quickly.
Yeah, and like speaking of that, like when Tony calls his contacts, he tells them he's going to see Lopez himself, because I don't know, it feels like every step Tony takes to do something like more Tony-ish makes him more of a crazy, insane, I don't even know what.
Honestly, that's the theme of this film, is that your desire for power, your desire to be greedy, your desire for more is not a good thing. It makes you a loser. It makes you a bad person. And you see this in Tony, like And when you've watched the movie, like I have, I've watched it, you guys have probably watched it at least 10 times. I've watched it so many times. You can see it right away. Every action that Tony makes is like very like egotistical, very selfish. He's always trying to get better. He could care less what Manny thinks. Manny's just along for the ride. And like, yeah, he meets the new boss, and like he's already angling to how he can steal this boss's wife and steal his wife.
Yeah, like right away, and he's saying the boss is soft and like, and yeah, it's just it's like like that drive, like like it's something that, and I find I see this in like a lot of like crime documentaries and stuff where it's like they've got like there's this drive there, and if it could be channeled or refined into or turned into something positive, it could, like, these people could be huge like successful millionaires in a legitimate world. But I don't know, it's just interesting.
I'd say that's what Frank Lopez saw in him. Like Frank was not necessarily a dumb guy. He got where he got. He got to a pretty sweet spot. He had like cops backing him up. He was coasting by, making like a good chunk of change, and he didn't let his head get too big. He had a smoking hot wife. Let's talk about that for a sec.
Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer was 12-year-old me's like super crush. Man, like
this was her first big like breakthrough role too, which is crazy to think. Like she did this movie and she's absolutely amazing. And I paraphrased her line just recently. Towards the end of the movie, she says like, "We're not winners here, we're all losers," when they're in the bathtub scene and they get all mad. And I love her character in this because she shows this kind of victim of all of this violence and criminal, because she can't do anything. She's like trapped by the fact that she's like with Lopez, and then she's trapped when she's with Tony, right? And it's really actually a sad story. But at this point, we're in this happy place where they listen to "Rush, Rush to the Yayo" at the club.
Well, they
don't
go
know
for dinner
about this yet.
They go for dinner with Lopez, and they're at this club, and Lopez doesn't want to dance with Elvira for some weird reason. So Tony does, and he's trying to turn up the charm as she cuts this scathing promo about a desert island. And like, what I love is like she tells him off so bad, and then right after that, it cuts to him in the car and just telling Manny, "That girl, she likes me."
Yeah. I love during that scene, like I love because like the whole and this happens a few times throughout the movie when Tony's trying to hit on Elvira. Michelle Pfeiffer's character, he keeps on referring to her as Meng. like when she tells him her last name's Hancock, and Terrell get prepared because she's like, "Hancock just sound like a bird, man, flapping around."
This is a good time to take a note that it is International Women's Day, and this movie, like a lot of movies that are older, would have been hella canceled for the way it treats women, especially. And the way that Elvira's character is treated in this movie is quite, I would describe as abusive by Lopez and by Tony.
Quite frankly, but
and Tony's that kind of guy. He says the boss is weak, and he basically says it won't last very, very long, which is hilarious.
Well, and I like how when he's in the car with Manny after that whole thing, and he's like talking, it kind of gets a little more serious, and we get the great line that like he's saying, "I want what's coming to me," and Manny's like, "What's coming to you?" He's like, "Yeah, the world, Chico, and everything in it." And I'm just like, this dude's crazy, like crazy.
Like that's not a normal thing. You imagine we were just driving, Phil. You were like, "Terrell, what's next?" And I was like, "The world." Like it just sounds so psycho.
You'd like pull out a bag of mushrooms, so as you said it, or something.
I guess. But like.
One thing I wanted to touch on, just we're talking about Tony and Manny. Something I didn't realize until I watched this. They did like a 30-year anniversary panel with all the main characters from the actors from the movie.
I think I saw what you're talking about.
And so the actor that plays Manny, Stephen Bauer, him and Al Pacino are talking about how they prepared for this role. And they actually lived together for like a few months before filming, and they would talk about their previous lives in Cuba, like as characters. In character. And so like that's like they have such good chemistry on screen, and a lot of it is due to that, because they just spend so much time just like hanging out in character, just preparing for this film.
And this is a good precursor to the next scene where Manny tries to pick up a girl. Because it's 3 months later, they're at a beach, they've gotten more successful, and
Manny's trying to.
He says the worst thing that I can't repeat, but he does an action with his mouth that was quite revolting.
For sure. And then he tries that as a pickup and ends up promptly getting slapped in the face. And then what I love is the heart-to-heart with Tony and Manny after, where we get the classic money women or money power women line.
Yeah.
But before that, sorry, there's Manny even before the tongue flick thing, which I guess he had to study how to learn how to do that for a while. But he's like, you know what I want someday? My own line of jeans with my name written.
Written across.
Which is kind of prophetic, because like in the future, women would wear like matching velour tracksuits with like sexy on the butt and stuff.
And I totally see that in a character like Manny, just like this handsome Cuban guy who just like,
loves the ladies.
Yeah,
like I actually looked at the timer at one point because I'm like, we're like a half hour into this movie and Manny has already sexually harassed like 3 women.
Well, in the scene where Tony almost died, he was like basically sexually harassing a lady at the car instead of protecting his buddy. Like
the hotel room scene with the chainsaw.
You can see the blood. You can see the blood in the bathroom, and Manny's too busy trying to grab ass. Like it's just insane how bad he is as a person. But anyways,
yeah. So then we get the fun scene with Tony bought a Cadillac for Elvira, and he's trying incredibly hard to impress her. And so there's this one little tiny segment there where it's Tony and Elvira in the Cadillac, and the acting is so authentic. Like I bought in because it's when Tony puts her hat on and he's trying to like charm her.
Yeah.
And the way that Elvira starts laughing, that was obviously a legit corpse. Like she just gave into that. Like there was no way that, I don't know. It was great.
I saw that. I noticed that too. And like I think I probably had noticed it previously, but it like really struck me this time. I'm like, like I don't think that was acting, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the power of Pacino's acting ability, though, right? Like every scene that he's in this movie, he's just electric. Like you automatically like he's like magnetic. You just watch him. Everyone else is kind of like whatever. And this is a great example of that because like maybe he did just improv that and stole her hat to make her laugh. It looks like that's probably the case, and I think a lot of this film is amazing. Especially this next scene where he goes and sees his mom, and you finally meet Gina. And you're getting all these different sides of Tony, and I love this scene because it kind of once again shows how crazy Tony is. Like he just shows up after 5 years, thinking that he's gonna just win the hearts and minds of his sister
with money
and mom with money.
They're like talking about their lives, and he's like, guess what? All that's over. Like just like literally just stops. Like, let's get this back on Tonyville, you know? Like,
yeah, all that's over. Your boy made it. That's it. But this is
$1,000.
This is actually the scene I alluded to earlier, where I really noticed that like Tony had been shaped by communism and was so anti "tell me what to do" that he started going way in the opposite direction. But he tries to like give his mom $1,000 and she just like tosses it back at him. And then what I love is after that, like when he leaves, like Gina like chases him out and she's kind of like I want in on this. And then we get a bit of foreshadowing here as Manny makes a comment about Gina's looks, and she shuts that shit down right away. She's not for you, man.
Well, it's a big bit of foreshadowing if you think about it, because this is one of the keys of Tony actually
of the end,
of the end of the movie.
So let's put a little pin in that one.
Put a pin in that. Go to Bolivia.
Yeah, exactly. Tony's earned Frank's trust, becomes a high-ranking guy for him, and we get the scene in Bolivia where he's arranging the deal for Frank. And what I love about this whole scene is, like, we could talk about the specifics and the nuances of this scene, and I'm sure there's going to be some great bits that you guys notice. For me, I just like was enraptured by this is Tony taking the next step in the ladder. Like, and you wonder how far he can go. The fact that here he is now with the Bolivian supplier and basically just like slowly taking over. He negotiates the deal. He wins over Sosa. Omar gets killed and they say he was a cop. And like,
I love how in that scene, like immediately, like Tony sees it and he's like, that piece of shit up there, I never liked him, you know?
I never trusted him.
which is crazy because he's like, you see a little shot of him all like crying and bloody, and then they hang him from the helicopter, and then they fly away with his body like dangling. It's so like just so like, and that got by. That's not X-rated. Like I don't know how that got by. They're upset by the first thing, and this one is even more graphic. I think because I saw that in real life, I'd be like,
So
yeah.
this just popped into my head. As sales guys, okay, I know a drug deal is a little bit different, but as sales guys, let's face it, like Omar was doing a pretty terrible job at negotiating that deal.
Yeah. Well, and it was clearly like, cause like you know, you've been on if you've been on like a tandem sales call before, you know, like if your buddy is like killing it, then you shut up and you let them kill it. And like even if they're saying some stuff that maybe you don't agree with, you let them have that rapport and that connection, and then you say, you know, and then you let them build that first, because that's what gets you to the sale, even if you have to iron out the details later.
And the best thing about this scene that I liked is that, you know, talking about it from a sales guy, what I liked was that in negotiation, what they teach you is that everyone has like a list. They have a list of strengths and weaknesses, and you have a list of strengths and weaknesses. And Tony clearly is like doing this as like, oh, you know, $7K a key to move it. And he's like, oh, we're going to split the risk. And they're like, oh, guaranteed delivery. You have to actually know like the ins and outs of your industry and what you're selling to be able to have that kind of conversation. And you can really tell that, like, even though Tony is a psycho, he really does know how to deal drugs and how it works and how to make money. And he overperforms Omar by like a lot. And it's so much so that like what I love about this scene is that like Omar shows kind of his true colors, that he's just like doesn't really like know what he's doing. You know what I mean? So I actually love this scene. I love the part where you know, he talks like, why don't I go back and talk to Frank and I'll fix things between us. And you get the scene, the famous line from Sosa where he's like, don't fuck me, Tony. Don't you ever try to fuck me.
So then
I say that at the end of all my business deals now.
Back at the end with Lopez and Tony, there's some tensions rising just because Tony was being so cavalier with his dealings and stuff. And Frank thinks Tony overstepped and took a bad deal. He thinks Sosa's going to eventually screw him and stuff. And all Tony's thinking about is growing, expanding, his ambition. This is the kind of the moment where his ambition really starts to kind of turn to greed. And I mean, we saw flashes of the greed earlier, but here's kind of where I felt was sort of where the wheel kind of switched.
At this point, all I could see in this scene was the decor in Frank's office. Like this green screen background, that's part of it. That's one wall that has like a hidden door in it. There's like the front end of a Cadillac that like Tony's leaning on like during this whole scene, and like crazy modern art. And I'm just like, oh yeah, you know what explains this? The 80s, lots of cocaine and living in Florida. Like that's only that combination, that perfect storm can result in decor like that.
What I liked about this scene is when Frank orders Tony to stall Sosa on this deal, you get this line that is like, once again, they're kind of building on what's going to happen. And he says, you know, the guys who last are the guys who fly straight, low key, quiet. The guys who want it all, Chicana, champagne, flash, they don't last. And then Tony's like, we finished? Can I go now?
Yeah.
and that goes to show, like, he just is like, he doesn't realize that, you know, Lopez is right, that he's like on this path of destruction and it's not going to end up good for him. And we constantly see this in this film. And I don't think most people, casual film goers, get that. Like, they're constantly referencing the fact that like Tony's on this path to destruction.
Yeah. Well, and like, and Lopez even like when he first takes Tony and Manny out to what's the
club? Yeah. I can't remember the name of the club either, but I know what you're talking
but anyways, when he first takes them out, you know, he says like, oh, this guy El Gordo, he's a real hasa. You know what a hasa is, Frank? And like you say, it's a pig who wants more than he needs and don't fly straight anymore. And yeah, it does keep coming up, but like right at the beginning, you know, Frank said that to him, and yeah, Tony just, it's just weird. Like, yeah, you realize like after watching them, you're like, oh yeah, Frank was actually right. Like he was making all the right moves and low key, and just didn't want more than what he needed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few consecutive scenes where the Tony Frank split kind of like becomes more solidified. First one, he comes back to see Elvira and straight up says he don't care about Frank no more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But then he
Yeah.
wins her over with some smooth dialogue, so good on him. And then we also have the club scene with the milk drinking narc officer, and this is kind of where the final straw happens with Lopez and Tony, because he just realizes that Lopez sold him out to the cop, and this is also the beginning of Tony's paranoia meltdowns. He's not super paranoid yet. He freaks out for another reason. He sees Gina dancing with this other gangbuster. What was his name? Fernando? Was his name Fernando? I think it was.
Something like that.
But yeah, this is like the slow beginnings of his unraveling. He like chases Gina and Fernando into a bathroom and basically like accosts the guy. And anyways, she gets mad, blah blah blah. He sees these dudes in the club with the guns now, and something's
Well,
up.
he doesn't actually see them. He's too wasted.
No, sorry. We see them.
Yeah. He's too wasted enjoying the comedian.
You know, that scene when he's sitting there and just all bummed out and wasted. I saw that scene and it just like the first thing that popped in my mind is like, oh, like that's somebody sitting on their smartphone. Like that's what people look like in public now.
Yeah. So Tony ends up getting shot, but he's able to actually get out of the situation. And
by shooting him in the legs.
Does he take both of them out?
By shooting him in the legs, and then the one guy kills himself by shooting like a psycho, and the lights fall on him.
Right. That's what it was.
So that weird clown guy that's like entertaining during that scene, and he gets shot, and Tony ends up using his corpse as cover. That was another thing the MPAA had a huge issue with, was the clown getting shot. They really did not like that. They wanted, because I think De Palma ended up sending 5 different, I believe it was 5 different edits of this film to the MPAA to get this done, and they kept on coming back with no. And so finally he was like, you know what, like I'm done. And he talked to Universal, and Universal actually went to war with the MPAA essentially and threw their weight around. And so finally they said, okay, no problem, we'll give it an R. And De Palma sneakily sent the original cut of this movie for the final printing. So there's no director's cut of this movie, because the director's cut is actually the version that you see now, which is a really cool story.
Explains why it's 3 hours long. Only a director would be so pompous to make a 3-hour movie and be like, that's fine. Send it. It'll be huge. Yeah.
Well, he's probably banking on the 3-hour timestamp to say that they're probably not going to scour through every minute of this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I like also about this is like Tony actually pulls off a pretty slick plan to like out Frank as a rat with the whole 3 a.m. call. Like I want you to call him at 3 a.m. and say that I got away or whatever. I just thought it was genius. And then when he finally confronts Frank, like it's just a great scene. Frank's trying to cover up. When he gets the call, he's trying to cover up by saying it's Elvira, and now Tony knows for sure he got narked out. Yeah. I love the line where he's like, I made what I could on the side, but I never turned you, Frank. And like it's just that intensity, that Pacino intensity is there, right? And I also love how this situation just turns from Frank being like all high and mighty at the start of the meeting to like once groveling. He's outed as a rat, he starts begging for his life. Yeah, just groveling. It's just a great tables are turned scene. Even though
I gotta use another one of mine when he's like, I'm not gonna kill you, Frank. Manolo, shoot that piece of shit.
What I love in this scene is when he kills Mel, the police officer, and he shoots him in the stomach, and he gives him a first class ticket to the resurrection. I love that. It's because he bribed him for 2 round trip tickets to London in their first interaction. And then he says that's my favorite Pacino line, like of Scarface.
And even right before, like, because like after he shoots Frank, after Manny shoots Frank, Tony sits down and Mel's like, "Yeah, I told him." He's just like still just oozing confidence, and like mid sentence just gets shot in the gut. He's like, "Fuck, like you can't shoot a cop." Whoever said you was one, like it's just it's so good. Like Tony is just like he clearly at this point like believes he is invincible.
And the funniest part about this scene is when it just like it's all over. They're like, "You want a job, Ernie?"
Yeah. The music cuts out, like Buddy's just sweating. You want a job?
Yeah.
Sure. He's like, you call me tomorrow. You call me tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that little recruitment.
Well,
And then we
it's such a nice little moment of levity, like after because that scene is so
Right.
intense and it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
long scene.
and there's a lot of
like,
shock value, like you said, the cop getting shot. Comes out of nowhere, right? So
Yeah.
you're kind of shell shocked a bit. So yeah, it's nice to have that sort of
yeah, it's like that little pressure release valve or something
yeah,
at the end of the scene.
exactly. And then we get perhaps the most on the nose foreshadowing in the whole movie with Tony seeing the world is yours on a
On
blimp.
the blimp.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, and
then
gotta love this about Elvira too, or Elvira. Sorry, Brett, if you were gonna get to this, but
yeah, it's
he
okay.
goes up to her room and is like, "Yeah, so I just murdered your husband," and she's just like, "Oh, hey, as long as there's cocaine and money, I'll just come live with you now," you know?
Yeah. Well,
Well, and that goes back to what I was saying though. Like, what other choice does she have? Would you say no to a guy like Tony Montana? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what other choice does she have? And like, what I think is so crazy is that she just is like completely emotionless about it, which is like just shows that she's just like in a hopeless situation. Which most people don't talk enough about this movie is that like Elvira's character is quite like sad. Like it's kind of a tragic character if you think about it.
at the same time, and I do totally agree with you, but it's not like she was taking any steps to get out of that.
You know,
She was
like,
perfectly
she-
happy
like,
with
she
the
does
money and the
leave, like,
drugs, right?
She
Yeah.
does end up leaving, and like it's like not like Tony's like chasing after her. You know, he's
No.
dealing with his own shit, and I think too part of it is when she does leave. Sorry to skip around to here a bit,
All
but
right.
he's such an egomaniac that he just thinks she's gonna come back.
Yeah, exactly. So right at this part is where we get the montage where
push it to the limit.
I was gonna skip over it because I've had enough of this damn song. But it's a cool montage. It's Tony making a bunch of money. He marries Elvira. He sets up his empire because would it really be an 80s movie without a montage filling
And
like
what a montage it is. I love the cheesy shot of like Tony like on the phone, like just like, oh yeah, no, I'll totally buy more coke off of you. Like,
yeah.
My favorite part is when he shows everyone his pet tiger. Like he gets married, he's like, "Hey everyone, check this out," and he's like, "Hey, you guys want to check out my pet tiger?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, who does that?
Yeah, well, and I love this. He sets himself up so well to the point that the bank can't take any more of his cash at the current rate. Like they have to charge him more. And he's such a greedy pig that he can't accept that the rate is going up. Like he lets it affect him so deeply mentally that it's like you needed any more stress
Well,
on your psyche, Tony.
That's one of his mistakes, though, because he lets Manny get this guy who is a cop actually, and it isn't. And what ends up happening is like he foreshadows this. He says he's like, we're getting sloppy because we're not hungry anymore, which is actually a very true and good way to think about when you're doing very illegal criminal things. You can't become sloppy. You can become too big though. And
well, and that's capitalism, right? And
yeah, exactly.
And like that's the conversation that we get that eventually leads into the Tony hot tub scene, which was the source
classic.
of many a college dorm poster in 2005, 2006.
Oh, yes.
Bunch of dorm bros idolizing Scarface, which is a conversation for a different day. But yeah, being rich is clearly starting to get to him. He has a fight with Elvira, which has the oft-quoted line in our friend group, "I was only kidding."
My favorite line in this part is when he at the end he was like, "Who do I trust? Me!" Like he's just
but he's by himself, right? So he's talking to himself.
Yeah.
The one thing that stuck out to me on this watch through that I don't think I really appreciated before is when Manny gets pissed off and like Manny leaves the room and he's just like, you know what? Gino or Elvira's right. You are an asshole, man. And Tony's just like, hey, come here, give me a kiss.
yeah.
But
Like
yeah.
Tony Montana, he's so nasty and evil, but he's fucking hilarious. Like has so many hilarious lines in this movie.
So yeah, then like you were mentioning there, Terrell, they go to see this Jewish money counter that Manny found. That's apparently going to give him a better rate to launder the money. And the one filmmaking thing that I did like is the way they made the time pass in the money counter scene with just like this cool shot of the old clock. And then the hands just like cross dissolve into like a later time.
Is it just me or should that clock might as well have just said like not a camera on it? Like, yeah, like there was no number 12.
Yeah. Yeah. And And
It
so
did look
it
very
should have been
suspicious.
obvious, but it wasn't. It turns out that there was a camera, and it turns out to be a sting, and Tony gets burned. And my first thought here was this was the note I took. I was like, that'll help with his paranoia.
Yeah.
But yeah, unbelievably posts a $5 million bail.
No problem.
But is facing...
He makes that in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. He's facing some jail time. So Sosa brings him in. And him and his crew are kind of feeling the heat because there's this Bolivian journalist who's talking all this mad shit about them and is kind of like outing them publicly. So if Tony takes care of this guy, then all his jail problems go away and all of Sosa and his partner's problems go away. So it really hinges on this one thing. But right off the hop, Tony doesn't like it because although he's become a rich, greedy addict piece of garbage kind of, he definitely won't kill a civilian who didn't do anything to him. But still, as he said, he'd rather die than spend a single day in jail, so he agrees to do it. And then we get the split scene with Elvira, the restaurant scene with Tony just getting hammered, and he's drunker than he was in the club scene at this point.
He's hammed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny because he's just like completely ignoring all the things, like slowly starting to unravel around him. And then Elvie leaves, and so then he has a business conversation with Manny, tells him he has to look after things while Tony goes to New York. Manny doesn't know what the hell is happening, so he walks out. And then we get the drunken monologue in the restaurant, which I actually really liked. There's some great stuff in there, especially like the way it kind of ended, where he's like, I always tell the truth, even when I lie.
Yeah.
He's like, you need people like me so you can say, there's the bad guy. He's like, so say goodnight to the bad guy. I just like,
Say
what up?
goodnight to the bad guy. You gotta say that one with the accent. Come on.
It's just so good, man.
The thing I love about that scene, it just reminds you of like every time that you're like at a party or whatever, and someone is like the drunk jerk and like has told to leave. They're always
but their mic drop scene is nowhere near as good as this one.
But it just reminds you.
You know what? If we want to go do a way back throwback to our Days of Confused episode. Yeah, when what's his face, Ben Affleck's character, when he's all drunk and everyone's just like, dude, fuck off, and he's still just yelling and shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the exact polar opposite of that.
Funny thing about that scene is, or one of the funny things about that was when Michelle Pfeiffer was auditioning for the movie. I guess Al Pacino did not want her for the role. And but the casting directors or whatever were really lobbying for her, so she actually auditioned multiple times, and one of the times was doing this scene, and she was like it was my last time I was going to go for this. I just didn't care anymore, and so I just went nuts and started throwing plates and like really like got physical with it. And I guess at the end there was all this blood everywhere. Everyone thought she had cut herself. She had actually cut Al Pacino, and then after that audition, Al Pacino was just like, "Yeah, I want this girl." And so that's how she got the role.
Well, judging by the intensity of, just judging by the intensity of Al Pacino's acting, that probably like appealed to him on that level, right? He was like, now that's acting.
Did you guys notice how much Al Pacino makes the microphone clip in this movie? Like when he's yelling, like I never really thought of it, but I could just see it I could just hear it peaking like so much throughout the movie. It's great.
So yeah, now at this point, Tony's going to go to New York and do the assassination on the Bolivian dude. And right at this point, my stoned brain, for some reason, I don't know, I must have just been confused or thinking of another movie or something, but I'm thinking this has to be a setup against Tony. Like, for some reason in my brain, I was like, no, Sosa's like set this up to fuck Tony and get him out of his life. But no, we don't ever find out that happens because Tony decides to shoot the shit out of Alberto. It's just like this weird twist of humanity. All of a sudden, like,
do you realize Alberto's the old dude from Breaking Bad with the bell?
Oh yeah, I do now.
Yeah, you know what I got from this? You know what I got from this scene? Despite this movie having like tons of people from Cuba and other countries that speak Spanish, this is the only scene where they converse in Spanish. And in the rest of the movie, we have to hear their shitty broken English the whole time. Why? Like, my thing in this whole movie, and I know it wouldn't sell and it's Hollywood, blah blah blah, is like, if these guys are from Cuba, wouldn't they be speaking in Spanish most of the time and really, instead of really poor broken English? Wouldn't that make more sense? This is the only scene where I'm like, this makes sense. because they
Yeah, they're all
sometimes
talking Spanish,
they
yeah.
sometimes speak in Spanish. You know,
Another thing that always irked me about that scene is like if you're doing like a stealthy like some criminal shit, like literally like hitting a very prominent figure with a fucking detonator and shit, why do you have beer cans on your dashboard? Like literally the least stealthy spot you could put something in your car.
It's just
And they
garbage
just got,
all
like,
over
just
the
like
car.
Budweiser.
Yeah.
It's a different time
Yeah.
in the 80s.
Yeah, I just the humanity here. I got that it was supposed to kind of, redeem Tony a little bit in the viewer's eyes, but I just wasn't having it. I was like, you've done way too much asshole shit by now. That like I'm glad you didn't kill a wife and her 2 kids, but at the same time, like you're still a piece of shit, man.
To be honest with you, I feel like it's not in character that he didn't do it. I feel like he'd be like, "Yeah, man, I need to get out of jail." that'd be the whole scene, like, right? Like, isn't that
I don't know.
more?
I don't know. I think it's more in character for him to not like he's while they as fucked up as they may be, like he does live by a set of or a certain code.
Yeah, by his balls in his word.
Yeah.
Balls.
But yeah, it's kind of one of the last like real glimpses of humanity you get out of Tony, because like right now is about when the coke-fueled downward spiral that is maybe the best final 20 minutes in any movie ever, or at least way up there.
He goes straight up cocaine psychosis, chopping up lines with his hands. Oh yeah, it gets pretty crazy.
He visits his mom. He gets the address for where Gina is, and it turns out it's Manny's place that he has with Gina, and he shoots the shit out of Manny. Like, okay,
his best friend. Yeah, like that.
His
was
brother.
like,
literally, the word Manolo. Like, I believe Manolo is like a friend term as well. Like it's his name, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. Like him and Manny, I don't know, man. They were like super tight. Like in a way, Tony wouldn't have been shit without Manny. Like Manny was like his right-hand man the whole time, doing everything he did. Like it should have been called Manny Face. Manny was the
the thing I hate about this so much too is like, I get that like you're protective of your sister and like you're like her father figure, but like if your sister's gonna be with someone and get married with someone, who better than your very best friend who is your trusted business associate, who is pretty handsome and rich? Like, what more could you want for your sister?
He literally already said he didn't trust anyone but himself, and the one guy that you actually can trust, you just shot just because like he likes your sister. Oh no.
Yeah, I think it kind of also throws to, and I like, if you ask me, it's pretty intentionally done, but like this borderline like incestuous love that Tony has for his sister Gina. And the reason why I say I'm pretty sure that they did it on purpose is because the 2 things musically that Tony loves, like the themes are the same basically. So for Gina and for Elvira, the music that kicks in when they come on screen is practically identical, and it was something that they did very much on purpose. So I think that kind of it's not just that Manny has his sister; it's that anybody has her, like aside from him.
Right. And like there's a lot deeper of a kind of exposition of that a little bit. We
actually get exactly what Phil says comes to life.
So it's all coming down around him. They head back to Tony's mansion, and we get the other college dorm poster standout scene with Tony and the massive pile of cocaine in front of him on his desk.
That is a lot of schneef.
Yeah, he is doing nose beers for months off of that stuff.
Well, and like I've seen movies where guys are doing lines and stuff, and I even see how the crazy one with the massive lines chopped up with his hands. I don't know that in another movie I've seen a guy just stick his face into a pile of cocaine and just go.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp does smash his face into large barrels of cocaine and stuff like that and blow. Yeah.
I was watching a documentary with him, and Brian De Palma's like, people keep asking, always ask, what was the coke made out of? Like, what did you use for cocaine? I've never told them until now. It was real. And then, of course, he laughs it up.
So Tony knows he's not long for shit, so he's just decides he's going to war. He's going to go down shooting. He laments the Manny killing and has the call with Sosa, where he basically tells him to bring it on. They're going to war. And then we get the weird scene with Gina and Tony.
Yeah.
And it just shows how far shit has gone.
Yeah.
Like she basically like pulls out a gun and starts shooting at him, demanding that he take me, Tony. And since he clearly doesn't want her to be with anyone else.
Meanwhile, while this is going on, there's an assassin on the other side of the open window, just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, who did Sosa send me to kill?
Yeah.
I agree with that. Like, that part scene, I was just thinking that, like, if I was the assassin, I'd be like, well, seems worth it, I guess. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, but at the same time, like, that's obviously part of the reason he bursts in and like shot the shit out of Gino is because like guns are going off and he's like, I'm here to kill someone and there's guns going off. Like I need to take care of this right now. But yeah, the place is just getting stormed here. We get Tony's last stand. And my notes are not really that thorough at this part because I just kind of sat and watched it. So folks, if you want like a play-by-play of Tony's last stand, go watch a YouTube video of it because Stone Brett put down the keyboard and just watch the chaos because I mean,
like, this scene is so iconic. Like,
yeah.
Thank goodness that we don't have to say the line about his little friend, but he gets his little friend.
Is that the one? This is my little friend, Richard. Is that the one?
Yeah, that line.
Love that line.
But my favorite part about this scene is that like he does survive quite a lot of gunshot wounds before succumbing.
One of my notes is actually like Tony believes he can win this gunfight.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He believes that these bullets can't even touch him, and I'm like, Tony, that's the cocaine, dude.
I was going to say, is it the cocaine? Yeah. He can't feel feelings, so. Probably can't feel bullet wounds either.
And didn't they also use cocaine like in medicine to like stop bleeding, suppress bleeding? So that would kind of explain a little bit of it as well. But yeah, he goes down swinging. Apparently, when they were what's that?
I was just gonna say he just to tie in with he thinks he can win this thing. Like I couldn't find an actual number of the total kill count of that last stand, but he had to have took out at least 30 people.
Oh yeah.
Like he gave an account. He gave a pretty good account of himself. I'll just say that.
Yeah. I guess Steven Spielberg showed up on set during the filming of this, and there's one shot I couldn't figure out exactly which shot, but he actually was just like Brian De Palma was like, "You want to direct a shot, dude?" And like so, there's one Steven Spielberg shot during that sequence.
It would have been the shootout because I could see that last scene being very Spielberg-esque, but nobody really knows, I guess. But yeah, speaking of that last shot, it's amazing. In the pool, we see Tony face down in the pool, and as it pans up, it's got "The World Is Yours."
Yeah, well, we got to say how that happens though, because Tony's absolutely kicking ass leading up to this, and he's they're shooting the shit out of him. He has to reload, and he's just he drops his gun, and he's just standing there like, "I'll take your fucking bullets. I'll tell I'm still standing out," like just going crazy. And then me out. Yeah. Buddy that actually hung Omar from the helicopter back in Bolivia.
The skull, right?
Up, yeah. Wearing sunglasses at night for some fucking reason inside in a tactical situation, and just like fires one shot into Tony. Well, I think two shots technically. I think he went both barrels into his back, and that wipes out. That's hasta la vista, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah. So then we get the circle back to "The World Is Yours" on the brass globe after it pans up and scene like the. I don't know, man.
You get some killer synths that kick in just to kind
of... Yeah, and I was just kind of like sitting there while you see the dudes like swarming in and stuff, and I'm just like, what a ride that was.
Yeah. And why are they walking so slowly? Like, do they think that like nobody else in that fucking neighborhood heard the intense like 15-minute gun battle with grenades and shit? Like...
It was
But,
Miami in the 80s. They're probably all coked up going
yeah,
out to
well,
the
that's
club.
like I'm like, oh, you know what? Probably all the other neighbors are also coke barons. I think actually Manny even says it at one point. We're not the only dopers on the street on this
Yeah,
this
he
block
does.
or something. He says so.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they're just like, no, I don't want to be the one to call the cops. Like, I don't want to have any reason to have them in this neighborhood. We'll just
Yeah.
let these Bolivians take care of business.
Oh man, like revisiting that just now, I feel a lot like I did when I finished the movie. It's just like that. I don't know.
It's a
Like,
wild
I'm-
ride, man.
I'm
Well,
Every
right.
time, like you can watch that movie, and like every time at the end, you're just like, yeah, like or at least for
Yeah.
me.
And see,
Yeah,
here's the thing we got to talk about with this movie. There's two ways to look at this movie. Like the way like douche bros and toxic dudes, like
the college dorm poster dudes.
yeah, and so like, and then there's like the actual film, and like speaking about it from like my point of view, I could care less about like the college dorm, like I really
Yeah.
hate how like people constantly say like say hello to my little friend. Like I hate that so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
But
Just
like,
the idolization in general to
Yeah,
me
like-
just makes no sense. Like,
there's a specific line when they're at the dinner that Elvira says is like, we're not winners, or in the bathtub scene, we're not winners, we're losers. And like, it's actually really true. Like what I took away from this movie is that it paints a portrait of a guy from nothing who like didn't even know how to speak the language, who makes something of himself through like grit and determination, but it comes crashing down because of his hubris and his like poor impulse control.
Yeah.
And what I like about this movie the most is that it really nails like the 80s in Miami. Like I did my research. Apparently it was actually really like this.
Oh
With, like,
yeah,
with-
well, if you want a great sorry, Terrell, I'll just interject here for a second. A great exploration of that time period is the documentary Cocaine Cowboys.
that's exactly what I was just gonna say.
yeah.
You can watch so many documentaries about this time, and apparently this is quite spot on. And that's what I love about this film. I love how spot in the environment is in the world that it's created. But what I really love is that like Scarface himself is like an entrancing kind of figure. Like he really is like the American dream perverted by like the 80s and the war on drugs and all that shit.
and greed.
And greed. But what I love about it is like no wonder it's so popular like in hip hop and all these like people that are immigrants and refugees, because like, you know, how often do we see a person of color beat the shit out of like the established old white dudes? You know what I mean? I love that. I love the seeing the little guy beat him up. But what the thing is about that it's kind of interesting about it is like it can also be misconstrued by this like douche bro culture that we see.
Mhm.
And they're forgetting the real point of the movie is that like, you know, greed is dangerous, and too much power means that someone is eventually going to take it away from you. There's always
Yeah.
someone that's hungrier than you. Every king loses his crown. You know what I mean? And,
Yep,
and that's the thing
exactly.
is like it does have the rag to riches story, but it's really about how greed and power are not sustainable. And I just really wanted to have this discussion because I love this film now, especially watching it from like my film critic mind, I guess that I've become with this show. But I just really hate the association with it with like toxic bro like culture.
Same.
Like
Yeah.
well,
Well, and, well, the thing is, like, this movie is actually an adaptation of a movie from the 30s called Scarface, and Al Pacino actually saw it. And I think it was actually Oliver Stone that he talked to about writing it. And it was the same thing. It's like, yeah, like, you know, like it's Icarus flying too close to the sun, you know, like you wanted too much. And it ends up being your downfall. And then and instead it's just like I think there are like gas stations in Hamilton and in the city I live in that just like 90% of their business is like Scarface blankets and shit. Like, like I don't know. It's just it's silly when it's become in pop culture. I can understand why, but like it's like in order to celebrate that, you have to like skip the last 40 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, for sure. So, boys, I guess it's that time to get to the Rizankings. Anyone want to go first?
I'll go first. I'm gonna give this a 9.5 out of 10 right out off the hop. No question about it. The only question is, should I have ranked it higher? It's one of my all-time favorites. I've owned this movie for I don't know, maybe 15 years at least at this point. It's so well done. You know, the scoring for the most part is excellent. The acting is excellent. It's one of those movies where they're like there's only one good character, and that's Tony Montana's mom. And like it just captures that world and paints that picture so vividly. And it's like, but it also has like it's almost got like a fun rompy feel to it before the cocaine psychosis kicks in.
You know what? I'm gonna give it a 9.5 as well. I think if you rank like all the best crime movies ever made, this would be like top 10 easily. I think we already did some of the really good ones, like The Departed is a really good crime movie. The Town is another one that I love that is a crime movie. There's so many we could talk on and on, but I think, you know, Scarface is a really controversial movie because it was so violent for the time. But underneath all the blood and the cocaine, there's a really, really good movie and a really good performance from Pacino that is undeniably amazing, even if his Cuban accent isn't really that great and probably ruin Cuban accents forever for Cubans. But I think the way that like he gets rich and he uses money to end up getting killed and ultimately, you know, falls from grace, it's a really cool storyline that we see in other movies. And, you know, it's really hard to find a movie that's better than this. It's like about crime, like maybe like Blow or something. I don't know, like maybe even Blow. I don't even is better. Like what's a better crime movie?
Yeah, I would put this at the top of its class for sure. As far as crime movies go, and it's right up there with another Al Pacino joint, The Godfather. You know, it's just
or Goodfellas. Like there's Heat, and what else? The Godfather. I would say Godfather is probably the number one crime movie, and then maybe like some other movies. But yeah, this one's top 10 easy.
Mm.
I'm gonna give it a 9. I like it a lot. It's a masterpiece of a movie. I don't like, we've already touched on it, but I don't like where some people have taken what is an actual wonderful story about the dangers of getting too big for your britches and made that into some kind of, oh, it's cool to be, you know, a badass who doesn't care about anyone. And I saw a lot of that in my my college days, and it really soured what was at the time like one of my favorite movies. I didn't even want to watch it or talk to these guys about it because just like their ideas of it, I don't know, didn't jive with the same things that I saw and the same charms and stuff. That said, it's still it's pretty much a near perfect movie, and so it's getting a near perfect score, 9 out of 10.
Nice.
So yeah, I think that about does it. Unless you guys have anything further to say, I want to just mention that next week we're lightening things up a little bit. Our song for the week is another vintage classic, "More Than a Feeling" by Boston.
Oh, finally a good song. Finally,
yeah. I was just gonna say we have dallied with the dregs of the musical landscape for long enough.
Fun singing the intro for that particular episode.
I might go down the octave, just saying. And then our movie, we're keeping it comedy. We're doing Step Brothers. Will Ferrell's going to double up.
This is my favorite comedy of all time. I am so excited to repeat every line.
Yeah, Will Ferrell.
Montana Lions.
Yeah. So Will Ferrell gets to join the Double Up Club. So we're excited for that, and yeah, we're excited to bring that to you next week. So if you're still with us, thank you for listening. Like we said at the top of the show, please check us out on social medias at The Stoners POV. Interact with us. We'll interact back. We're just waiting for someone to say something. Suggest a movie, suggest a song. We're happy to do it, and we're happy to give you the props for shouting it out. And you know, if you feel like getting high and taking notes and sending them to us, we'll see if there's anything worth shouting out and potentially do that. So just interact with us, folks. We know you're listening. Okay, we have numbers that say that like at least
desperate here.
At least 12 people are listening. I'm approaching desperation. Yeah.
Next week, Brett's going to be giving out a prize to someone who answers. The first person who answers, I will do anything.
But you know what? Yeah, not acknowledging that elephant in the room certainly wouldn't have potentially brought any interaction. So better something than nothing, I suppose. But yeah,
Yeah, I know.
I feel like that's about as good a time as any to wind this down. So unless you guys got anything else you want to get off your chest, we can wrap this up and come back next week with some heaters.
I love you, Wade.
Love you, Wade, and Connor, and at least like 9 other people that I think listen to us. So we know you're hiding. We know you're hiding out there. That's what it is.
They definitely are now.
Yeah, we can look at. We can see the stats. We can see when you watch.
We've got analytics.
Yeah.
Did we make the website?
Don't hide.
Okay. Do you want to play rough? Okay. Say hello to my little friend.